The whiskey in Julian Blackwood's glass caught the dying sunlight, amber turning to blood. At 32, he stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, watching the city below like a king surveying a crumbling kingdom. The mahogany door opened without warning. Victoria Blackwood entered, navy suit sharp as a knife's edge, silver hair pulled into a flawless chignon. She had built empires. Now she was about to dismantle her son's freedom. "We need to discuss the Wellington contract." Julian didn't turn from the window. "I already told you no. The company is hemorrhaging money, Julian. Wellington Group is our only option." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "But they won't deal with an unmarried CEO. They want stability, commitment. So I should marry a stranger?" He finally faced her, jaw tight. "Like you married father?" The words landed like stones in still water. Victoria's marriage had been a merger of dynasties, successful in every way except the one that mattered. Julian had grown up in a house where respect replaced love, where dinner conversations felt like board meetings. "Your father and I built something meaningful. You built a prison." The office door opened again. Nathan Cross entered, Julian's best friend since college, now his lawyer. His usual grin was nowhere to be found. "The Wellington Group wants an answer by Friday. 4 days." Julian's hand moved through his dark hair, a gesture Nathan had seen 1,000 times. They had exhausted every option. Every door had closed. "What about the Morrison deal?" "They're concerned about long-term viability." Nathan's voice was hollow. Victoria leaned forward. "I've already identified a suitable candidate." "You've what?" "Her name is Celeste Morgan, 29, graduate of Columbia with a degree in art history, currently a teacher." Victoria's words were surgical, precise. "She's from a good family. She understands the arrangement." The name hit Julian like a freight train. His breath caught, memories flooding back unbidden. A girl with paint-stained fingers. A laugh that sounded like summer. A goodbye he never got to say. "Have I met her?" "Not recently." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "Julian, I've reviewed everything. Legally, there's no other way to save the company in time. But this is your choice." Julian looked down at the city. 5,000 employees. Thousands more depending on them indirectly. Lives that would shatter if he chose his own happiness over theirs. "What's she like?" Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Kind, intelligent, independent. She's not doing this for money, Julian. She has her own reasons." The weight of it pressed down on his chest, suffocating. At 32, he had imagined marriage differently. Love, partnership, not this cold transaction. "When?" "Next weekend, St. Margaret's Cathedral." Nathan stepped closer. "Are you sure about this? We could find another way." "What other way?" Julian's voice was hollow. "We've looked everywhere." He turned back to the window, watching the sun disappear behind skyscrapers. "All right, I agree. But I want to meet her first. Tomorrow. Somewhere private." Victoria's smile was triumphant. "Of course." After she left, Nathan lingered. Sometimes the best things come from unexpected places. Julian managed a bitter laugh. "Since when are you an optimist?" "Since I watched my best friend sacrifice everything for people he's never even met." Alone, Julian poured another whiskey. The name echoed in his mind. Celeste Morgan. It couldn't be the same person. That Celeste had vanished 10 years ago, leaving nothing but questions and a hole in his chest he'd never managed to fill. But if it was her, if fate was cruel enough to bring her back like this, then tomorrow's meeting would answer the question that had haunted him for a decade. Why did she leave? Across the city, in a modest art studio, Celeste Morgan stared at her phone. Her Aunt Margaret's voice trembled through the speaker. "You need to come to the house. Now. There's something we must discuss." Celeste's hand shook as she set down her paintbrush. The afternoon light suddenly felt cold, ominous. "What's wrong?" "Just come, please." An hour later, she sat in Margaret's elegant living room, watching her aunt pace like a caged animal. Margaret Whitmore had raised her after the accident, after everything fell apart. She had never seen her aunt like this. "You're scaring me." Margaret stopped, turned. "I've been contacted by Victoria Blackwood. She's offered to save the Morgan Art Foundation. A substantial donation, enough to expand everything." Celeste's heart lifted for a moment before reality crashed down. "What's the catch?" "Her son needs a wife. An arranged marriage, Margaret's eyes were desperate. She's asked if you would consider it. The room tilted. Celeste heard the words, but they made no sense, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. This is insane. The foundation is dying, Celeste. We've sold everything. You've been using your own salary to keep it alive. Margaret knelt before her. This could save your father's legacy. Everything he built for those children. Who is he? This son? Margaret hesitated, and in that pause, Celeste felt the ground shift beneath her. Julian Blackwood. The name detonated in her chest. The room spun. 10 years collapsed into nothing. She was 19 again, in love, painting his portrait in secret, memorizing the way he laughed. Before everything went wrong, before she disappeared. No. The word came out strangled. No, I can't. He doesn't know it's you. Victoria said he asked about you, but she didn't give him details. Celeste stood abruptly, walked to the window. Her reflection stared back, older now, scarred in ways that didn't show. Julian Blackwood, the man she'd loved, the man she'd left without explanation, the man who probably hated her. Why would she choose me? She knows our families were connected through the art world. She doesn't know about your history with Julian. Margaret's voice cracked. But Celeste, this isn't just about the foundation. The donation includes enough money to cover your medical bills. All of them. Celeste's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, where the scar from her heart surgery lay hidden beneath her shirt. The surgery her aunt had mortgaged everything to afford 3 years ago. The debt that kept Margaret working at 70. You told her about that? She did her research. She's offering to clear everything. A fresh start for both of us. Outside, the sun was setting. Celeste saw her parents' faces in the dying light, remembered her father's dream of giving underprivileged kids a chance to create beauty. She thought of the children in her classes, bright-eyed and hungry for more than the foundation could provide. And she thought of Julian, the boy who had become a man, the first love who had probably spent 10 years wondering why she vanished from his life without a word. When would I meet him? Tomorrow night. Dinner at Le Bernardin. Private room. 24 hours to prepare herself. 24 hours to figure out what to say to the man whose heart she'd broken to save his future. Because Julian didn't know the truth. He didn't know that Victoria had visited her 10 years ago, threatened to destroy his career before it started if Celeste didn't walk away. He didn't know that every day since had been a war between love and sacrifice, and tomorrow she would face him again, pretending to be a stranger agreeing to a business arrangement, when the truth was so much more complicated, so much more painful. Tell Mrs. Blackwood I accept. Margaret exhaled in relief, but Celeste felt only dread. Tomorrow night she would sit across from Julian Blackwood and lie about everything. Everything except the fact that she'd never stopped loving him. Le Bernardin's private dining room smelled of expensive wine and old secrets. Celeste arrived early, her black dress simple but elegant, her hands trembling as she smoothed invisible wrinkles. The room was all dark wood and soft lighting, intimate in a way that made her chest ache. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times. Stay calm, be professional. Don't let him see that your heart is breaking. The door opened. Julian Blackwood stepped inside, and time collapsed. He'd changed. The boy she'd loved had sharp edges now, a jaw that could cut glass, shoulders broader from carrying the weight of an empire, but his eyes were the same storm gray that had haunted her dreams for 10 years. Those eyes locked on her face, and she watched recognition hit him like a bullet. Celeste. Her name on his lips was half prayer, half curse. He stood frozen in the doorway, hand still on the handle. It's you. She rose from her chair, legs unsteady. Hello, Julian. You. He stepped inside, closed the door with controlled violence. You're the woman my mother chose. You're the one I'm supposed to marry. His voice was ice over rage. She could see him fighting for composure, see the questions burning behind his eyes. The waiter who had been approaching backed away quietly, sensing danger. I didn't know it was you either, Celeste lied. Not until yesterday. 10 years. Julian moved closer, predatory. 10 years, Celeste. No explanation. No goodbye. You just vanished. I looked for you everywhere. I thought you were dead. Julian, please. Please what? He laughed, bitter as poison. Please understand? Please forgive you? You destroyed me. The words were knives, each one finding its mark. Celeste wrapped her arms around herself. Armor against truth. I had my reasons. Reasons. He was right in front of her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. What reasons could possibly justify disappearing without a trace? We were supposed to meet that night. The gallery opening. I waited for 4 hours, she remembered. The dress she'd bought with money she didn't have. The painting she'd finished of him, planning to give it as a surprise. And Victoria's voice on the phone, cold and absolute. Stay away from my son, or I'll make sure he never works in this city again. I'll destroy every opportunity, every connection. You're a nobody from nowhere. He deserves better. I can't explain it. Celeste's voice cracked. Not yet. Can't or won't. Does it matter? Julian stared at her, and she saw the moment he decided to rebuild his walls. His expression went cold, professional. The warmth she'd once known flickering out like a dying star. Fine. Let's discuss the arrangement like adults. He moved to the table, poured wine with hands that barely shook. My mother offered your family money. How much? Enough to save the Morgan Art Foundation, and to clear some debts. So you're doing this for money. The accusation stung because it was partially true and completely unfair. I'm doing this to save my father's legacy, to help children who have nothing, to repay the woman who raised me after my parents died. Something flickered in Julian's eyes. Your parents died? Car accident, 10 years ago, 2 months after I left. She watched him process this, watched calculations happening behind his expression. He'd been so angry he hadn't kept track, hadn't known. The guilt that crossed his face was brief but unmistakable. I'm sorry. I didn't know. How could you? She sat down, needing the chair for support. We haven't spoken in a decade. Julian sat across from her, the table between them feeling like an ocean. The waiter returned, nervous, and they ordered without tasting, going through motions of normalcy. So, Julian swirled his wine. A business arrangement. We married to satisfy the Wellington Group's requirements. You get your money, I save my company. And then what? Your mother said we'd figure out the details ourselves. How convenient. His smile was sharp. Tell me, Celeste, if I'd known it was you, would you still have agreed? The question was a trap. She met his eyes, those storm gray eyes that still made her heart stutter. Yes. Why? Because 5,000 people need their jobs more than I need my pride. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition of his own sacrifice mirrored in hers. We were good once, he said quietly. Before you left. We were happy. We were kids. I loved you. The words hung between them, past tense but still alive, still dangerous. Celeste's composure cracked. Don't what? Don't tell the truth? Julian leaned forward. You want to do this? Fine. We'll marry. We'll play the part. But I need to know one thing. What? Did you ever love me? Or was I always just convenient? The question broke something inside her. All the years of silence, of protecting him from his mother's threats, of sacrificing her own happiness for his future, and he thought she'd never cared. I loved you more than anything. The words came out raw, unplanned. Leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Then why? Because sometimes love means letting go. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you. They stared at each other across the table, the air thick with everything unsaid. The food arrived, and they ate in tense silence. Two people who once knew each other better than themselves, now strangers sharing a meal. Finally, Julian spoke. The wedding is Saturday. 5 days. We'll keep it small. Just family. All right? After, we'll maintain separate lives. You can stay in the guest wing of my penthouse or find your own place. Whatever you prefer. Separate lives. The words tasted like ash. Unless you'd prefer something else. Celeste looked at him, really looked, saw the hurt buried under anger, the walls built from confusion and abandonment. She'd done this to him. Protected him, yes, but also wounded him. Separate lives are fine. Julian nodded, but something in his eyes looked broken. My mother will handle the details. Dress, flowers, all of it. You just need to show up. I'm good at that. Showing up when expected, the barb hit its target. Julian flinched. You really want to go there? No, Celeste stood abruptly. I don't want any of this. But we're both trapped, aren't we? By money and duty and other people's needs. Julian stood too. And suddenly they were close again, breath mingling, years collapsing into nothing. His hand reached out, stopped just short of her face. I used to dream about seeing you again, what I'd say, how angry I'd be. His voice was rough. But now you're here and I just feel empty. Julian, don't marry me if you're going to break my heart again, Celeste. I barely survived it the first time. The confession was so raw, so honest, that tears burned her eyes. She blinked them back, refused to cry in front of him. I won't break your heart. This is business, remember? Hearts don't factor in. Right, business. But when his hand finally made contact, fingers brushing her cheek with impossible gentleness, they both knew it was a lie. Hearts were the only thing that factored in. Hearts were the reason they'd both agreed to this insanity. His thumb traced her bottom lip. She stopped breathing. Saturday, he whispered. Saturday. Julian pulled away first, grabbed his coat. At the door, he paused, looked back. The painting. The one of me. Do you still have it? She'd sold it 3 years ago to help pay for her surgery. No. Shame. It was good. He smiled, sad and distant. You were always talented. Then he was gone, and Celeste collapsed into her chair, hands shaking. The waiter appeared with the check, discreet and professional. She signed it, added a generous tip for his trouble. Outside, the city sparkled with 1,000 lights. She stood on the sidewalk, coat pulled tight against the October wind, and let herself remember. 19 years old. Julian's apartment. Paint under her nails, his hands in her hair. Laughter and plans and promises they'd both been too young to keep. And Victoria's voice, destroying it all with surgical precision. Her phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. How did it go? Celeste typed back. He knows who I am. Saturday still happens. Another buzz. This time from an unknown number. Don't think this changes anything. Stay away from my son's heart. It's just business. VB Victoria. Still pulling strings. Still protecting Julian from the wrong things. Celeste deleted the message, but the words remained, burned into her mind. She'd stayed away for 10 years because of threats. Now she was marrying Julian because of money. Either way, Victoria Blackwood controlled the narrative. But standing there on that street corner, cold wind biting through her coat, Celeste made a decision. She would marry Julian. She would save the foundation. She would play the dutiful wife, but she would also find a way to tell him the truth, even if it destroyed everything. Again, St. Margaret's Cathedral stood like a ghost in the October rain. Celeste stared at herself in the small dressing room mirror, hardly recognizing the woman in white. The dress Victoria had chosen was exquisite, vintage lace and silk that whispered against her skin like secrets. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the curve of her neck, the rapid pulse at her throat. You look beautiful, dear. Margaret adjusted Celeste's veil, hands trembling. Your mother would be so proud, Celeste doubted that. Her mother had married for love, had built a life on passion and art and partnership. This was survival dressed in wedding clothes. A knock at the door. Victoria entered without waiting for permission, elegant in champagne silk, her expression unreadable. Margaret, would you give us a moment? Her aunt hesitated, then squeezed Celeste's hand and left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Victoria circled her slowly, examining like she was purchasing art. You clean up well. Julian should be pleased. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Celeste kept her voice steady. Your son married. The company saved. Everyone in their proper place. I wanted my son protected. Victoria stopped in front of her, eyes sharp. From distractions. From people who would hold him back. From me, you mean. You disappeared once already. It made things easier. The confirmation was a slap. Celeste had suspected, but hearing it stated so plainly, so coldly, ignited something dangerous inside her. You threatened me. 10 years ago, you told me if I didn't leave, you'd destroy his career. Victoria's smile was ice. I did what was necessary. Julian was 22 with his whole life ahead of him. You were a nobody from a failing family, a distraction he couldn't afford. I loved him. Love. Victoria laughed softly. Love is a luxury, Celeste. Security is a necessity. I gave Julian the world. You would have given him nothing but obstacles. And now you're forcing him to marry me anyway. The irony is astounding. Now the circumstances are different. The marriage serves a purpose. Keeps things tidy. Victoria moved to the window, watching rain streak the glass. But make no mistake, this is a business arrangement. You will be his wife in name only. You will not interfere with his life, his decisions, or his future. And when this is done, when the company is stable, you will leave again, quietly, with your money. And if I refuse? Victoria turned, and the threat in her eyes was crystal clear. Then the foundation loses its funding. Your aunt loses her home, and those medical bills your heart surgery generated. I'll make sure they're called in full, immediately. The words hit like physical blows. Celeste gripped the back of a chair, knees suddenly weak. You researched all of that. I research everything. It's how empires are built. Victoria smoothed her dress. So we understand each other. Play the role. Stay out of Julian's heart. And everyone gets what they need, except Julian. He gets a lie. He gets to save his company and 5,000 jobs. That's what he cares about. Victoria left, and Celeste stood alone in the small room, the wedding dress suddenly feeling like chains. Through the walls, she heard organ music beginning, guests assembling, a handful of people witnessing a transaction. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan, Julian's best friend who'd been surprisingly kind during the rehearsal dinner. You okay? You look pale. She typed back, Fine, just nervous. But she wasn't fine. She was about to marry a man who hated her, under threats from his mother, for money that would save lives but destroy her own. Another text, this time from a number she didn't recognize. I know what Victoria did, 10 years ago. I have proof. Meet me after the ceremony. Library, 3rd floor. Come alone. Don't tell Julian. Celeste stared at the message, heart hammering. Someone knew. Someone had evidence of Victoria's manipulation. But who? And why come forward now? A knock. Margaret returned, eyes red. It's time, sweetheart. Celeste pocketed her phone, took a breath, and let herself be led toward the altar. The cathedral was dim despite the candles, shadows pooling in corners. The guest list was minimal. Nathan, a few board members, Victoria sitting front row with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And Julian. He stood at the altar in a black suit that fit like armor, hands clasped, expression carefully blank. But when he saw her walking down the aisle, something cracked in his composure. His lips parted, eyes widening, and for just a moment, she saw the boy she'd loved. Then the walls came back up. She reached the altar. The priest began speaking words that meant everything and nothing. Celeste barely heard them over the roaring in her ears. Repeat after me, the priest said. I, Celeste Morgan, take you, Julian Blackwood. I, Celeste Morgan, take you, Julian Blackwood. Her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Julian's turn. I, Julian Blackwood, take you, Celeste Morgan. His voice cracked on her name. Just slightly, but she heard it. Heard the weight of 10 years and unanswered questions. The priest continued. Vows about love and honor and staying together, all lies in service of truth. When it came time for rings, Nathan stepped forward, handed them over with an expression that said he knew this was wrong, but didn't know how to stop it. Julian slid the ring onto her finger. Cool metal, beautiful in its simplicity. When she did the same for him, his hand caught hers, held it just a moment too long. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, and she looked up into his eyes. I'm sorry, he mouthed. For what, she didn't know. For this marriage? For not finding her 10 years ago? For still caring when he shouldn't? I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. The moment stretched. Julian stepped closer, hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. His eyes searched hers, looking for something. Permission, maybe? Or forgiveness. Then he kissed her. It was meant to be brief, perfunctory. But the second their lips met, 10 years disintegrated. His hand slid into her hair and she gasped. And suddenly the kiss deepened, became something real and desperate and completely inappropriate for a business arrangement. Someone in the pews cleared their throat. They broke apart, both breathless, both shaken. Julian's eyes were wild. Celeste. But the priest was already declaring them married, and guests were standing, and the moment shattered into obligation. They walked back down the aisle together, his arm through hers, playing the part of newlyweds. In the vestibule, Victoria intercepted them. Lovely ceremony. The photographer wants pictures in the garden. In the rain. Julian's jaw was tight. The rain gives it atmosphere. Come. They stood in the garden, rain misting around them, pretending to be happy. Julian's hand on her waist burned through the dress. Every photo felt like evidence of a crime. Finally, it was over. Guests filtered to the reception at a nearby hotel. Julian disappeared to speak with the Wellington Group representatives who'd attended. Celeste found herself alone and remembered the text. Library. 3rd floor. She slipped away from the reception, heels clicking on marble floors. The cathedral had a connected library, old and dusty, rarely used. The 3rd floor was almost dark, only emergency lighting casting shadows. Hello? She called softly. A figure stepped from between bookcases. Not someone she expected. Nathan. You came, he said, relief in his voice. You sent that text? You know what Victoria did? I suspected for years. But I only found proof recently. He pulled out his phone, showed her emails. Victoria to a private investigator, 10 years old. Instructions to find Celeste and warn her away. Threats detailed in clinical language. Evidence of coercion. Why are you showing me this? Nathan's expression was anguished. Because Julian deserves to know the truth. He's my best friend. And he's been destroying himself with guilt for 10 years, thinking you left because he did something wrong. If I tell him, Victoria will destroy everything. The foundation, my aunt, me. Victoria's power is built on secrets. Expose them and she has nothing. Celeste stared at the emails, hands shaking. This was the evidence she needed. Proof that she hadn't left because she stopped loving Julian, but because she'd been forced away. But using it meant war with Victoria. And Victoria didn't fight fair. I need time to think. Celeste, he's in love with you. Still. Maybe he always was. Nathan's voice cracked. Don't you think he deserves the truth? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed below. Julian's voice calling her name. Up here, she called back, shoving her phone into her clutch. Julian appeared at the top of the stairs, breathing hard. His tie was loosened, jacket gone. He looked between her and Nathan, suspicion darkening his expression. What's going on? Nothing, Nathan said quickly. Just congratulating the bride. But Julian knew his friend too well. You're lying. Both of you. What were you talking about? The moment crystallized. Celeste could tell him everything right now. Show him the proof. Blow up Victoria's carefully constructed control. But then she thought of the children in the art foundation. Her aunt's home. The medical debt that would bury them both. Wedding jitters, she said. The lie tasting like poison. Nathan was just reassuring me. Julian looked at Nathan for confirmation. His friend hesitated, then nodded, but the damage was done. Julian had seen the lie in both their eyes. Right. Wedding jitters. His voice was flat. The car is waiting. We should go. He turned and walked away, shoulders stiff with anger. Celeste moved to follow, but Nathan caught her arm. You're making a mistake. Lies don't protect anyone. Sometimes they do. She left him there in the dark library, hurried after her new husband. But the weight of the secret felt heavier now, a stone tied around her neck, pulling her under. In the car, Julian stared out the window, jaw clenched. The reception had been brief, just enough for appearances. Now they were headed to his penthouse, where they would begin their separate lives under the same roof. Did you sleep with him? The question came out of nowhere. Celeste turned to stare at Julian in shock. What? Nathan, during the 10 years you were gone, did you sleep with my best friend? No, God, no. Julian, how could you even think that? Because you both lied to my face just now, and I don't know what else you're capable of. His eyes were storms. I don't know you anymore, Celeste. Maybe I never did. The words cut deep, but she couldn't defend herself without revealing everything. So she sat in silence, watching the city blur past, feeling the distance between them grow with every mile. At the penthouse, Julian showed her to the guest wing with clinical politeness. The rooms were beautiful, impersonal, A 5-star hotel masquerading as a home. The wedding night tradition, he said from the doorway. I assume we're skipping it? Yes. Good. Because I can't look at you right now without remembering that kiss. And how fake it probably was for you, Julian. Good night, Celeste. Welcome to your new life. He closed the door, and she heard his footsteps retreating. Stood in the empty bedroom in her wedding dress, feeling more alone than she had in 10 years. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Nathan, I told him. I'm sorry. I couldn't keep lying to my best friend. He deserves to know everything. Check your email. Horror flooded through her. She opened her email, found Nathan's message. He'd forwarded all the evidence. Victoria's emails, the proof of manipulation and threats. And he'd sent it not just to her, but to Julian too. Within seconds, she heard Julian's roar of rage from the other wing. Glass shattering, furniture moving, the sound of a man's world breaking apart. Then footsteps, rapid and furious, heading toward her room. The door slammed open. Julian stood there, phone in hand, face white with fury and betrayal. 10 years. His voice shook. 10 years you let me think I'd done something wrong. That I wasn't good enough. That you just stopped loving me. Julian, let me explain. Explain? He laughed, wild and broken. My mother threatened you. Told you to leave or she'd ruin me. And you just went. No fight, no conversation. You just disappeared. I was protecting you. From what? From having a choice? From knowing the truth? He moved closer, and she could see tears mixing with rage in his eyes. You made me the victim without my knowledge. You decided what I could handle, and you let me spend a decade hating myself. I was 19 years old and terrified. Your mother had the power to destroy everything you'd worked for. So you destroyed me instead. The words hung between them, true and horrible. Celeste felt tears streaming down her face. I loved you enough to let you go, to give you the future you deserved. That wasn't your decision to make. Julian's voice broke. You didn't trust me enough to fight for us. You just gave up. I didn't give up. I sacrificed everything, and I never asked you to. He turned away, hand in his hair. God, Celeste. We could have had 10 years. 10 years of building something together. Instead, we both just suffered alone. He walked to the window, shoulders heaving. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. My mother is downstairs, in my office, waiting to discuss the Wellington merger. She doesn't know that I know. That Nathan sent those emails. Celeste's heart stopped. What are you going to do? Julian turned back, and the look in his eyes was ice. I'm going to finish what she started. I'm going to destroy everything. Celeste grabbed Julian's arm as he moved toward the door. Wait, think about this. I've done nothing but think for 10 years. He pulled free, but stopped. She manipulated both of us. Played us like pieces on a board. And for what? Control? For you. In her twisted way, she thought she was protecting you. By destroying the woman I loved. Julian's laugh was bitter. That's not protection. That's cruelty. Downstairs, Victoria's voice echoed. Cool, composed, calling Julian's name. Celeste's mind raced. If Julian confronted his mother now, in this state, everything would implode. The Wellington deal would fall through. The company would fail. 5,000 jobs would evaporate. And the foundation would lose its funding before the money even transferred. Julian, please. If you do this now, everyone loses. Everyone's already lost. But he hesitated, hand on the doorframe. The Wellington Group representatives are still in the city. The deal isn't finalized yet. She moved closer, desperate. If Victoria finds out we know, she'll sabotage everything. She's vindictive enough to let the company burn rather than lose control. So what? We just pretend? Keep playing her game? We play smarter. Celeste's voice steadied, strategy forming. We wait until the Wellington deal is signed. Until the money for the foundation clears. Then we confront her with evidence she can't deny. We take away her power. Julian stared at her, jaw working. You want me to walk down there and act like nothing's wrong. I want you to be strategic instead of reactive. Your mother taught you that, didn't she? The jab landed. Something flickered in Julian's eyes. Recognition that she was right. Victoria had built an empire on calculated moves, never acting from emotion. How long? The Wellington signing is Monday. 3 days. The foundation transfer happens Tuesday. Celeste's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed firm. Can you wait 3 days? I don't know. Footsteps on the stairs. Victoria appeared, elegant and annoyed. "Julian, the Wellington representatives want to confirm Monday's meeting. I need you to call them." Julian's hand clenched into a fist. Celeste held her breath, waiting to see which version of him would answer. The furious son or the calculating CEO? "Of course, Mother. Give me 5 minutes." Victoria's eyes narrowed, sensing something off. She looked between them, at Celeste still in her wedding dress, at Julian's rigid posture. "Is something wrong?" "Just wedding night jitters." Julian's smile was knife-sharp. Celeste was just explaining the sleeping arrangements. "Separate rooms as discussed." "Good." Victoria's gaze lingered on Celeste. "Remember our agreement, dear. This is business. How could I forget?" Celeste met her eyes, and for just a moment let her own anger show. Victoria left, and Julian exhaled slowly. When he looked at Celeste again, something had shifted. 3 days. "But I want something in return." "What?" "The truth, all of it. Not just what Nathan sent. Everything that happened after you left. Where you went, why you never reached out. All of it." Celeste nodded, suddenly exhausted. "All right, but not tonight. I can't do this in a wedding dress." Something almost like humor crossed Julian's face. "Go change. Meet me in the library in 20 minutes. If we're going to wage war against my mother, we need a strategy." He left, and Celeste stood alone, realizing what she'd just agreed to. 3 days of pretending everything was fine. 3 days of living in the same space as Julian, knowing the truth, unable to act on it. 3 days that would either save everything or destroy what little remained. She changed into jeans and a sweater, washed the makeup from her face, took down her hair. When she entered Julian's library, he'd changed too. Looked more like the boy she'd known in college. He'd poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one across the desk to her. "Start talking." So she did. Told him about Victoria's visit 10 years ago, the threats, the impossible choice. Told him about her parents' death 2 months later, the accident on a rainy highway that left her orphaned and drowning in debt. About moving in with Margaret, watching the foundation crumble. About teaching art to kids who reminded her why any of this mattered. 3 years ago, I collapsed in the classroom. Heart arrhythmia, genetic condition my mother had. Her hand moved unconsciously to her chest. The surgery saved my life but destroyed us financially. Margaret mortgaged her house. I maxed out credit cards. We sold family heirlooms, including the painting I made of you. Julian flinched. The painting. A collector bought it for enough to cover 2 months of medical bills. I'm sorry I lied at dinner. I just couldn't tell you I sold the only piece of you I had left. He was quiet for a long moment, drinking slowly. You should have told me. About all of it. I would have helped. How? Your mother made it clear that any contact would result in your career being destroyed. I couldn't risk it. So you suffered alone to protect me. Again. Julian's voice was raw. Do you see the pattern, Celeste? You keep making sacrifices without asking if I want them. Because you would have tried to save me, and Victoria would have buried you. Maybe I wanted to be buried with you instead of living in this perfectly constructed nightmare she built. The confession hung between them. Celeste felt tears threatening again. I thought about reaching out 1,000 times, but I convinced myself you'd moved on, found someone who didn't come with complications. I dated. Julian's laugh was hollow. God, I tried. But no one was you. No one painted at 3 a.m. or laughed at my terrible jokes or challenged me to be better. He looked at her, really looked, and she saw the years of loneliness written in his eyes. You ruined me for anyone else, Julian. No, let me finish. He stood, paced. When my mother told me she'd found a candidate for marriage, part of me was relieved. Business, simple, no emotions, safe. He stopped in front of her. Then you walked into that restaurant, and every wall I'd built just shattered. Standing there at the altar today, watching you walk toward me, I hated that I still felt everything. What do you feel? The question was dangerous. They both knew it. The library suddenly felt too small, too warm. Julian's eyes dropped to her lips. Angry, betrayed, confused. He stepped closer. And completely, devastatingly in love with you still. The words detonated between them. Celeste couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 10 years of distance collapsed into nothing. We can't do this. The arrangement is for 3 days. Then we confront your mother, Then we figure out what happens next. What if I don't want to wait? Julian, say you don't feel it too. Say the last 10 years killed whatever we had. Tell me that kiss at the altar meant nothing. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Tell me and I'll walk away. We'll keep it business, but she couldn't lie. Not about this. Not anymore. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. The confession broke whatever remained of his control. Julian kissed her, and it was nothing like the altar. This was desperate, furious. 10 years of longing poured into one moment. Her back hit the bookshelf, his hands in her hair, and she was 19 again, in his apartment, believing in futures that seemed possible. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Julian rested his forehead against hers. This complicates everything. I know. We still need to wait. Still need to be smart about Victoria. I know. But after. His eyes searched hers. After we deal with her, we figure out if there's still an us. A real us. What if there isn't? What if too much damage has been done? Julian's smile was sad. Then at least we'll know we tried. Instead of spending another 10 years wondering what if. A sound from the hallway made them freeze. Footsteps approaching. They pulled apart just as Nathan appeared in the doorway looking guilty and relieved. I know you're probably furious with me. Beyond furious, Julian said, but his tone lacked heat. You sent those emails without warning. I couldn't watch you two destroy each other with lies anymore. Nathan looked at Celeste. I'm sorry for blindsiding you, but he needed to know. You're right. Celeste straightened her sweater, trying to look less disheveled. We needed the truth. So what now? Julian filled him in on the plan. Wait until the deal's closed, then confront Victoria with evidence. Nathan listened, lawyer brain already working through logistics. You'll need documentation beyond the emails. Financial records showing the foundation payment. Proof that Victoria made the marriage conditional on specific terms. Can you get that? I'm your lawyer. I have access to everything. Nathan's smile was grim. By Monday, we'll have enough evidence to bury her manipulations permanently. After Nathan left, Julian walked Celeste back to the guest wing. At her door, they stood awkwardly, newlyweds who were something more and something less than married. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we act like everything's fine. I'm good at that. 10 years of practice. Julian's expression softened. No more secrets after this. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, she agreed. He kissed her forehead, gentle and heartbreaking, then left. Celeste entered her room, closed the door, and finally let herself fall apart. Slid down the wall, wedding dress pooled around her, and cried for the girl she'd been, the woman she'd become, and the future that was still so uncertain. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know what you're planning. Monday's meeting won't happen the way you think. Be ready, VB, Victoria knew. Somehow, she knew they were coming for her, and she was already 3 steps ahead. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Celeste stood in Julian's penthouse kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hands, watching the sun rise over a city that held her fate. The text from Victoria haunted her. 3 words that promised destruction. Be ready. Julian entered, suited for war, tie perfectly knotted. His eyes found hers across the granite counter. You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't. She showed him the text. Watched his jaw tighten. She's bluffing. Nathan has the files secured. The Wellington meeting is in 3 hours. She can't stop this. But Celeste knew Victoria Blackwood didn't bluff. She calculated, manipulated, and always had contingencies. What if she's not alone? What if someone at Wellington is feeding her information? Then we adapt. Julian poured his own coffee. Movements controlled. We've come too far to back down now. Nathan arrived an hour later, briefcase full of evidence, expression grim. We have a problem. The foundation transfer was supposed to process this morning. It's been frozen. What? Celeste's cup shattered on the floor. Coffee spread across white tile like blood. How? Victoria filed an injunction. Claims you entered the marriage under false pretenses, that the arrangement was based on deception. Nathan's voice was clinical, lawyer mode engaged. Without the marriage being legitimate, the foundation funding is void. That's insane. We're married. There were witnesses. She's arguing that the marriage was coerced. that Julian didn't have full information when he agreed. Nathan looked at Julian. She's using our evidence against us. The email's proving she manipulated you 10 years ago. She's saying if the marriage was based on that manipulation continuing, it's not legally binding. Julian's face went white. She's weaponizing her own crimes. Exactly. And she's threatening to go public with everything. Your relationship history, the arranged marriage, the business motivation. She'll destroy the Wellington deal and the company's reputation in one move. Celeste felt the room spin. Victoria had turned their weapons into her shield. What if I withdraw? Leave the marriage, void the arrangement? Her voice shook. The foundation doesn't matter. Save the company. No. Julian's hand caught hers. We're not giving her what she wants. 5,000 jobs, Julian. That's bigger than us. Everything's bigger than us, according to her. When does it end? His eyes blazed. When do we stop sacrificing for other people's manipulation? Nathan's phone rang. He answered, listened, face draining of color. That was Wellington Group. They want to move the meeting up, now. They've heard rumors of instability and want confirmation before they finalize anything. The trap was closing. Victoria had orchestrated this perfectly. Force them into a corner, make them choose between truth and survival. I'm going to that meeting. Julian's voice was steel, and I'm telling them everything. The arrangement, the manipulation, all of it. If they walk away, so be it. But I won't build the next decade on more lies. Julian, please. Celeste grabbed his arm. Think about this. I have. For 3 days, I've thought about nothing else. He turned to face her fully. You sacrificed 10 years to protect me from my mother's threats. Maybe it's time I sacrifice something too. Your company is just a company. You're my life. The words hung in the air, raw and devastating. Nathan looked away, giving them privacy in the moment. If you do this, we lose everything. The foundation, your legacy, all those jobs. Or we gain our freedom. Julian's hands cupped her face. I'd rather be broke and honest with you than rich and trapped by her forever. A door slammed downstairs. Victoria's voice echoed, sharp and commanding. Julian, we're leaving for Wellington now. The car is waiting. He didn't look away from Celeste. Come with me. To the meeting. Whatever happens, we face it together. She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion choking her. They descended the stairs together. Victoria waited in the foyer, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit. Her eyes narrowed seeing them united. Celeste. How unexpected. This is a business meeting. She's my wife. She comes. Something flickered in Victoria's expression. Fear, maybe, or recognition that she'd underestimated her son. The car ride was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Nathan sat in front with the driver, files on his lap. Victoria stared out the window, expression unreadable. Julian held Celeste's hand, thumb tracing her wedding ring. Wellington Group's headquarters towered over downtown, glass and steel monument to old money and older power. They were escorted to a conference room where 3 executives waited. Richard Wellington, 70 and sharp as broken glass, his daughter Catherine, who'd inherit the empire, and their lawyer, a woman who looked like she ate souls for breakfast. Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood. Richard's handshake was firm. And Victoria. Always a pleasure. Shall we begin? Victoria moved to sit, but Julian stopped her. Actually, before we sign anything, there's something you need to know. Victoria's eyes flashed warning. Celeste held her breath. Julian told them everything. The arranged marriage, his mother's manipulation 10 years prior, the business motivation behind the wedding. His voice never wavered, laying out facts like evidence in court. The room was silent when he finished. Catherine Wellington leaned back, arms crossed. Her father's expression was unreadable. Why are you telling us this? Richard asked finally. Because I won't build a partnership on lies. If you want to work with Blackwood Industries, you deserve to know who you're dealing with. All of it. Including that your marriage is essentially a business transaction. Was. Julian's hand found Celeste's. It started that way, but that's not what it is now. Victoria stood abruptly. Julian, you're throwing away everything. No, Mother. I'm finally choosing something that matters. Richard Wellington studied them, decades of business instinct analyzing every detail. Then surprisingly, he smiled. Sit down, all of you. Let's talk. For the next hour, they negotiated. Not the original merger terms, but something different. Wellington wanted transparency, partnership, shared risk. They'd seen too many companies fail from hidden problems and family dysfunction. "Here's my offer," Richard said finally. "We'll proceed with the acquisition. But Victoria steps down from any operational role. Julian runs the company with full autonomy, and we install an independent board to prevent future manipulation." "That's unacceptable." Victoria's voice was ice. "Then we walk." Richard's tone matched hers. "I've spent 40 years building this company on trust and integrity. I won't compromise that now." Victoria looked at Julian, and Celeste saw something she'd never expected. Defeat. "You'd really destroy what we built. Everything your grandfather started, you destroyed it the moment you chose control over love." Julian's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm just cleaning up the damage," Catherine spoke up. "Mrs. Blackwood, you built something remarkable. But companies evolve. Leadership changes. That's not death. That's growth." For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. Then she stood, gathered her coat with shaking hands. "Fine. Have your company. Your freedom. Your love." She looked at Celeste, and the hatred there was palpable. "But know this. Without me, Blackwood Industries would be nothing. You'll fail without my guidance. Then we'll fail together." Julian stood too. Instead of succeeding alone, Victoria left, heels clicking on marble like gunshots. The door closed behind her with awful finality. Richard broke the silence. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most foolish. Probably both." Julian's smile was exhausted. "Do we still have a deal?" "We do. On the new terms." Richard extended his hand. "Welcome to the Wellington family, Julian. Celeste." The papers were signed. The deal was done. Walking out of that building, Celeste felt lighter than she had in years. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived." Julian pulled her close. "That's not the same as winning." Nathan caught up with them on the sidewalk. "The foundation, Victoria's injunction, will be overturned." Julian's voice was certain. "I'll personally fund it until the legal issues resolve. No child loses their art program because of my mother's vindictiveness. That's a lot of money. It's just money." He looked at Celeste. "Some things are worth more." That night, they stood on the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights blur in the distance. The weight of the day pressed down, exhaustion mixing with something that felt like hope. "Your mother will never forgive us." Celeste leaned against the railing. "I know, but maybe that's okay. Maybe some relationships are too toxic to save. What happens now? To us?" Julian turned her to face him, hands gentle on her shoulders. "I think we start over. No arrangements, no business deals. Just two people figuring out if they still fit together after everything. And if we don't, then at least we tried honestly." His smile was sad and real. "But I think we will. We're both too stubborn to give up on something this rare." Celeste kissed him, soft and promise-filled. They had lost so much. 10 years, Victoria's approval, the simplicity of their old lives. But standing there in the dark, city spreading below them like possibilities, she realized they'd gained something too. Truth. Freedom. Each other. "I love you." The words felt new and ancient at once. "I never stopped, I know. I could see it in every sacrifice you made." Julian pulled her closer. "Now we get to love each other without fear, without manipulation. Just us." "Just us," she echoed. 3 months later, Celeste stood in the reopened Morgan Art Foundation, watching children splash paint across canvases with uninhibited joy. The space had been renovated, expanded, made beautiful. Julian had ensured that. He found her there, suit jacket slung over his shoulder, tie loosened. Blackwood Industries was thriving under his leadership. The Wellington merger had brought stability, innovation, growth. Victoria had been wrong. He didn't need her to succeed. Ready to go home? Home. The penthouse had become that. Not a prison of separate wings, but a real home, filled with Celeste's paintings and Julian's books and their shared laughter. Almost. She gestured to a canvas in the corner. "I finished something. Want to see?" It was a portrait. Julian at 19 and Julian at 32, side by side. Past and present merged, showing the journey between who he'd been and who he'd become. But unlike the original she'd sold, this one included her reflection in a window behind him, watching, loving, finally visible. It's beautiful. It's us. All the versions, the ones we were, the ones we are, the ones we'll become. Julian studied it, then pulled her close. "Hang it in our bedroom. I want to see it every day. Even the sad parts? Especially those. They're what made the rest possible." Outside, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of hope and new beginnings. They'd survived manipulation, betrayal, loss. They'd sacrificed and suffered and somehow found their way back to each other. Victoria never reconciled. She built a new life, new company, new empire somewhere far away. Sometimes Julian wondered if she was happy. Mostly, he just felt relief. Nathan became the foundation's lawyer, handling its affairs with the same dedication he'd shown in helping expose the truth. He found love too, eventually, with a woman who appreciated his loyalty and moral compass. And Celeste and Julian built something that looked nothing like a business arrangement. It was messy and real and completely theirs. They fought and made up, created and destroyed, loved with the intensity of people who knew how easily everything could disappear. On their first anniversary, not of the arranged marriage, but of the day they chose each other freely, Julian gave her a gift. The original painting, the one she'd sold. He'd tracked it down, paid twice what it was worth, brought it home. "How did you find it?" "Turns out I'm as stubborn about love as I am about business." He hung it opposite the new portrait. Past and present, loss and reclamation. Now we have both versions. The one you made when we were kids who didn't know better, and the one you made after we learned how hard love actually is. Celeste cried, and he held her, and they stood in their home surrounded by evidence of survival. Because that's what their story was, ultimately. Not a fairy tale or a romance novel ending. Just two people who refused to let manipulation and fear win, who chose truth over comfort, love over safety, each other over everything else. Some days were still hard. The scars from 10 years apart didn't heal overnight, but they were healing. Together. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The end.